Hey everybody, it's me, Mr. Didn't make a video for 3 weeks but still got 100k subs. So I'm here in a fake location, undisclosed location obviously, to talk about something very important. The easiest class to play in Dungeons & Dragons. And I talked about this in my other video, the one I made, I don't know, a while ago. It got some views. And I said that the 3 easiest classes are the rogue, the fighter, and the monk, and these are kind of undisputed, except everybody got their tits in a tussle because I was all like, you know what? I think the monk is the easiest. And everybody was like, wrong. So, I just left it there. I didn't really respond to it afterwards. That's just what I thought. But then I was like, you know what? I should bring this up to some other people, like my friends. And maybe they'll have the idea. No, they all think I'm wrong. So guess what? I'm here today to change everybody's minds or have all of you hate me. And that's fine too. So let's talk about what the video says that I'm going to talk about. In this old video, I broke down the classes into 4 categories. Offense, support, magic, and utility. I also broke down these categories into difficulty in case anybody who was brand new to the game was wondering what to play and was like, well, I should pick something easy, right? And that way they can have fun playing the game while trying to understand the rules. I think the offense category is the easiest to play, meaning that everybody in it, each class in it is pretty much the easiest. However, if you want to really have an easy time in Dungeons & Dragons, I recommended the monk. And everybody was like, that's not correct. Fucking phone is vibrating because everybody thinks this is a perfect time to message me. So first, let's take a step back. Why don't I consider the magic classes easy to play? I can already hear lots of you typing away on your keyboard about the easiest goddamn wizard you ever played. I've had experiences with players who have never played D&D before. I'm sure all of you have. When I want them to enjoy the game, it doesn't always come down to their character and their build. It isn't really a video game. The point behind D&D is the fun that you have with your friends. So really, us talking about what's easy to play isn't always valid. Somebody could enjoy playing a druid and enjoy the challenge they get out of playing a difficult class in comparison to playing a rogue. So all of this is really subjective. And I'm not here to start setting metas on what Dungeons & Dragons classes should be. This game is not balanced. It's never going to be balanced. It's not intended to necessarily be always balanced like an online video game. Fireball is a pure example of a portion of the game that is specifically overpowered because it's cool. This is also why we have terms like min-maxers, because there are specifically people who play this game that exploit the unbalanced portion of the game to make themselves better, and we don't like that. That's dumb. That's also why I have an entire series that rips straight into the classes and shows how either awful or unbalanced they are, because A, it's satire, and B, it's really easy to do. I'm not special, guys. Y'all can make fun of this game. It's not that difficult. That's a topic for another video. My point is, my opinion doesn't matter. You don't have to listen to me. Just go have fun and do whatever you want. That being said, this is my opinion about why I think your newer players should play monks instead of fighters. Here's the basic principle this video is going to fall under. How little do I have to teach the player? Let's start with everybody's go-to, the fighter. Harbored as the easiest, simplest class to play in D&D. The concept of a fighter is really simple. You just fight things. Pick any background and it fits perfect with the class. However, simple doesn't always mean easy. To play a fighter, you need to understand a few things. Combat, weapons, proficiency bonus, and the different terms in which weapons can be used. The terms versatile, two-handed, light, finesse, etc. You also need to know the different dice that correlate to those weapons. I know you don't have to always explain these things to your new players, but this is just something that they'll need to know if they want to play the class. This can be understood easily enough. We're not trying to teach D&D to a brain-dead monkey, but the fighter does come with a little bit of game knowledge in its own. Flanking, advantage, the difference between attack bonus and damage bonus. See, a fighter in my eyes isn't as simple as it looks. A fighter is very versatile. It can be a lot of different things. Well, Jacob, you could always just make a pre-made sheet and hand it over to your players and have all the important things outlined in red. When we as humans play games, we put our focus into one aspect of the game to understand how the game works. All of our brain power for learning how to play the game has to go one step at a time. So typically there's only one aspect that we're trying to learn at one period and area at a time. That's why games like Risk and Monopoly are confusing to new people, because there's like 30 aspects to this game that you can only learn through experience, no matter how many times you read the rules. When you play a game of Risk for the first time, you're not going to win the first time unless nobody's ever played the game before. Then it's kind of just random chance. You're going to lose your first game, learn 2 or 3 things about it, and then be able to use that knowledge to continue to possibly win the next games. And this doesn't just apply to Risk, this applies to almost every board game, video game out on the planet. And Dungeons & Dragons is the same way. You've got 3 main things to focus on in Dungeons & Dragons: role-playing, combat, and exploration. Each of these things have subcategories that make it even more complicated. Not even thinking about your own character, a new player can get very overwhelmed with all the possibilities and things you can do in Dungeons & Dragons. This is why, in my opinion, playing a fighter can be complicated to new players. Even if you just give them a sword and a shield and you tell them, hey, you do this and that's it. They're having to understand that armor and shields increase armor class, that all swords are different and yours do this, this, and this. In comparison to that paladin, he's using a battle axe, he rolls a d12. Why don't I roll a d8? Because you roll a d8. Unless you're using 2 hands, and it's you think, fuck, it's so confusing. Not to include, you also have things like second wind, action surge, multiple attacks, feats, and lots of other things to think about and activate. This leads on to my next point. Rogues! I think playing a rogue is much easier than playing a fighter. I say it in my How to Play Rogue video.
Rogue is a very straightforward class. There are only about 2 things you need to manage at level 1. Sneak attack, and the fact that you're playing Rogue.
When a fighter's concept can be muddled through the many things you need to learn in D&D for playing for the first time, I think the concept behind understanding a rogue is much simpler. As a fighter, your options are many. You can flank, attack, run, trip, push, shove, all the different things you can do in combat. The fighter's typical option is to attack that guy, but it's not always what their class is designed to do. Hence the rogue. You go into combat, pick an enemy that is engaged with your friend, and do damage. I think the rogue is specifically designed to be completely simple and easy for not only players to run in-game, but for dungeon masters to run in-game as well, which is an entire aspect we're not bringing into this entire discussion. The dungeon master should know the rules, and so should experienced players. A new player is going to need help from the dungeon master, and the rogue's very simple skill set and abilities make this really easy for the dungeon master to convey the rules to them. So sure, the rogue can flank, run, trip, shove, push, dodge, disengage, but their class isn't necessarily designed to do all those things. Hell, you can even skip over opportunity attacks with the new players because rogues can disengage as a bonus action. So you can just be like, yeah, you can run away. And then if they want to know what that is, you can explain it to them. Even if they want to move more quickly, you can just be like, yep, you know that they can dash, disengage, or hide as a bonus action. That's not that difficult to remember, and let them do that in combat. They don't need to necessarily question it, and if they do, then you can explain it. The point here is the opposition and how you're explaining the rules to the game. With a rogue, with a fighter, they need to understand what it is first, and then they can do it. With a rogue, you just be like, yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that. And then if they want to go, well, why can I do that? Then you can be like, oh, because of this ability. And I know those abilities. Abilities, there's 2. There's 2 at the lower levels. Compare a fighter and a rogue's turn. Fighter wants to attack but doesn't know who. They have to spend time to choose whether to use range or melee. They also have to decide who to fight. Considering other actions requires the DM to have knowledge of that readily available, like versatile or 200 weapons, or maybe they're using a bow and they have 2 weapons, they want to use a dagger and a short sword. Meanwhile, the rogue is pretty much 3 things to remember. Deal extra damage if you're attacking somebody who's near an ally, and you can dash, disengage, or hide as a bonus action. That's 2 things. That's only 2 things. I overcomplicated this. This simplicity allows the player to be eased into the game's rules instead of being bombarded with all the rules that they need to know as soon as they start playing the game, which can possibly turn them off from playing Dungeons & Dragons. So, Jacob, what does this have to do with the monk? It kind of sounds like you're saying the rogue is the easiest class. Here's why I think monks are the easiest classes to play for brand spanking new players. Fighters are simple because they have very limited amount of abilities and they're very basic in concept. Rogues are easy because they have 1 task and no optional activating abilities. Monks are even easier because they have 1 task, 1 weapon, and that's it. The monk, in my opinion, is easy because you only need to punch. And if you want, you can spend ki to do more punches. Oh, that's not that complicated at all. You can just do an extra punch. Do you need to do the other ki abilities? No, because they're pretty much basically as simple as all the other classes.
Jacob, you kind of sound like a hypocrite. You're saying that the fighter doesn't have to do all these other things, and you're saying the monk doesn't have to do them either. I don't understand.
My point is that the fighter's class is built to have lots of options. You can disagree with me if you want, but I completely believe that the fighter is not made to just go into combat and attack people with swords. I think they're made to do many different things. The monk is not. They're not meant to use ranged weapons or multiple swords or going into combat and doing all these fancy things. You go in, you pick a guy, and you go punch. And then if you want to, can I do another one? Yes, but you spend a ki point. Okay, punch. Like, how hard is that to understand? The monk also doesn't need to manage weapons, inventory, special moves, besides ki, combat maneuvers, or activating abilities. Besides ki, but I already went over that. They have fists and ki. Hand your brand new player a monk, and if they say, well, what can I do? You say, you can punch things. And that's all they need. That's all they need to know. That's all they need to know. They don't need to know anything else than that. They don't even know what stealth is. They can figure that out on their own. How much damage does my punch do? The smallest dice. Okay, well, what about armor class? That's something you mentioned earlier, the shields and stuff, they have to know armor class and all that. Well, guess what? Armor class is already preset with the monk because you've got dex plus wisdom. So it's just there in their character sheet. They only need to look at the number and read it. I don't need to fumble around with, do you have your shield out? No? Oh, then you only do a d8 damage and your armor class 16. They're like, what? But why though? And again, this is really easy for dungeon masters as well, because the DM only really needs to manage their ki points, and everything else is written on their character sheet. Even in later levels, they're only really going to get passive abilities that only affect their character sheet, like running up walls. That's not something they have to activate. That's just something they can do. Increased speed. Oh look, that's just another thing written on your character sheet. Slow fall. This is all things that the Dungeon Master can manage on their own. And the option to catch arrows can also be prompted by the DM. All of these things can. They're not all on the player. The player doesn't need to know all these things. This, in my opinion, you feel free to disagree. You go down those comments and you're like, Jacob, you're just a fucking idiot, and I think that the Mystic is the easiest class. Is the best way to ease people into Dungeons & Dragons. By limiting the amount of things they need to focus on or activate or know the rules for, they can focus on things like role-playing, exploration, and combat without getting a headache from all the experienced players around them going about all the rules that they need to know. Oh, and even if we're going to compare subclasses, Way of the Open Hand is much simpler than Champion or Assassin. It's a close call with Champion. They're both really, really easy. They're all very similar. But, those are things that you learn as you level up, unless you're starting your game at level 3 with the new player, which I don't recommend. You shouldn't do that. If somebody's brand new to D&D, you should start them off at level 1 so that they can learn everything instead of being like, why do I have 18 hit points? Oh, because we rolled your dice already. Well, you rolled dice. Yeah, you rolled dice in this game. Did you know that? You rolled dice in this game. Oh, which one? That's basically every new player. So next time you have a new player at the table that's never played D&D, like your girlfriend, like your mom, maybe you should be like, hey mom, do you like Kung Fu? Bam! And you should give them a monk, because then they'll like the game maybe. Unless your mom just really doesn't like monks. She's like, no, give me a wizard. Come on. Try me, bitch. And then after you give them that simple class, maybe you can ease them into trying a druid or a cleric, because then they'll actually understand how the game works. That's Jacob's hot topic of the week month. I don't fucking know. I'm gonna disappear behind this thing. do something.
What's happening,
while I
guys? I
this-
can't see. My eyes! My eyes!
This is terrible. I cannot see anything from up here.
They took something.
What did they take? I
My
cannot see.
eyes! They took my eyes!
My eyes.
And they're all just all screaming.
Fucking A. 13 damage, y'all.
Tony, Faye, you freak out, and the wings come out and they go back in, and you see Tony is just swinging wildly, and on one of his smacks, the axe goes, or the club smacks you upside the head for 13 damage.
Did I get one? Did I get one?
It cleaves her, and you hear a gurgling noise as blood comes out of her mouth.
But he's so small, if you guys look over, his whole mouth cheeks just keep puffing as he's blowing furiously into Faye's mouth. He hasn't removed the dagger. He's still there.
He's pushing it in every time.
I saved her! I totally saved her! I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna...
Oh boy, I'm glad some of you guys don't have to watch this.
Are we going to struggle to get this fucking cat out of a tree? Do we need to
No,
call?
I'm already here.
Do we need to call
He slides down the side of the tree, and he's now next to all of you.
If you just lick her face, she'd wake right up.
Why would I lick my mother's face, you disgusting bastard?
No, the sleeping Faye.
Why would I lick her face? Look, I don't know what you two got up to last night for all night long.
Yeah, nobody wants to be over around here licking random bitches. I'm just saying.
I didn't lick the pussy, and the pussy didn't lick me. We just went to sleep.
Together. Are you
You just
related?
went through an illusionary rock. I mean,
So they are rock crunchers, a cousin to you, tree crunch.
they walked through the rock.
Rock watchers.
It wasn't a real rock.
Walker, rock walkers.
Forget the rock.
They're air fuckers, all right? They just walk through the air. That's it. That's what they are. They're air fuckers. That's
Okay.
it. It doesn't matter what they are.
I had a 12, yeah.
Being a druid, what is your favorite terrain?
I wouldn't know. I'm a ranger. My favorite terrain is forests, though.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Here, I will keep you warm.
Would you sleep with me, kitty?
For you, Baron, I would.
You should have pet him.
Oh, it's a
Don't
cute.
mind the hair.
Be careful, Baron. I hear this leads to pussy licking.
That is not... I'm not going to say it.